But Texas and custody, a lot of people don't realize what really custody means, and they feel like it's so competitive and it's just so, adversarial. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really have to be that way. That's not really how I think about it. But sometimes, if there's obviously been abuse,
Mm-hmm.
especially toward the kids or neglect, then a custody would be, custody fight would be appropriate. But
Yeah.
the way Texas looks at it, they call it conservatorship. Okay, conservatorship, and so they're looking at conservatorship and possession and access. So that's
Okay.
what we would call custody. Possession and access is very simple. It's just who has physical possession
Of
of
the
the
child.
children
Mm-hmm.
and when. Okay, so but the conservatorship part of it, there's two kinds. There's a joint managing conservatorship, and there's a sole managing conservatorship.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a presumption in Texas that joint managing conservatorship is proper. So the idea between in Texas is, hey, you know what? Both these parents
Should be
should be
involved.
very involved. Now, sole managing conservator doesn't mean the other parent's not involved.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. They still get visitation. They're still going to pay child support. They're still going to be in that child's life. When people say custody, a lot of times it's more like they don't understand, about how the joint manager conservatorship works.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you're joint and you have basic rights and duties, and I wrote some of those down so I could go over them, but it's going to be stuff like establishing the primary residence of the
Residence.
child, usually within a particular area in Harris County and surrounding counties, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Um, consenting to invasive, which just means it's surgery, which means they actually go in and do some kind of a surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to make decisions as far as where the child goes to school?
Yeah.
Who's going to receive child support? Who's going to have access to psychologists or psychiatrists or counselors or those kind of things? So you can get real caught up on it, but keep in mind that joint managed conservator, one person will usually establish the primary residence of the child within a certain area. They can also do it a different way where the child's residence is restricted to a certain area.
That's true.
And so sometimes that helps because it's all the language thing. I mean, when you say there's a child, instead of saying such has the exclusive right to designate the primary residence of the child, the other person's like, well, I want that too.
Yeah.
But if you restrict it to a county, sometimes that solves that
Yeah.
problem. But don't get caught up in all the semantics and all the wording. That's not what
Remember,
it's about.
yes, and don't forget that things always change. Time goes by, your life changes. Everybody, goes on and moves on and gets past, the divorce, period and all that stuff. So give yourself some time, but don't make it, final. I mean, leave some room for adjustment.
Well, what I would just say is that don't get caught up in all the wording because really it comes down to this. A normal joint managed conservator, one person does decide where they're going to live. It's going to be in Harris County if it's filed suit here. It's going to be the surrounding counties. Normally, that person, whoever establishes the primary residence, is also going to make decisions as far as the child's education, only because most people go to public school. And so
Mm-hmm.
wherever they live, it's going to be that's where they're going to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one person's going to get child support unless you're doing some kind of funky agreement as far as splitting things up. It doesn't mean you. It doesn't mean that you get if it's sole, you don't get everything, and then when you're joint, you don't get everything. But some things you'll have and the other person won't.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have it on your own, these rights. You can have it jointly where both y'all make decisions together. And that's required that way. Or you can have it where one person says, look, I'm going to make a decision, but I have to confer and talk with my spouse first
Mm-hmm.
and consult with them. So don't, people just want to go immediately and start fighting about these things. But really it's a matter of terminology. And once you explain to them, for example, have people just say, I want to be sole managing conservator. Well, the Texas courts really don't like that. Again, there's a presumption that joint is correct. Okay, so fine. What rights do you really want to have that you think it's important that you are the only one to have
Yes.
that? And you still can do that under a joint managing conservatorship.
Mm-hmm.
So there's ways that you can do things.
And you can adjust it according to, the basic necessities of that family or, the individual. Like, for example, if somebody, if somebody works out of town a lot, I mean, there's no reason to do like a split custody, right? I mean,
Well, and
there's,
don't even get into the split custody thing.
well,
Okay, so
I'm just making suggestions
no,
and, you know,
don't try not to modify things and get things customized. Don't do that unless you want to pay me a lot of money, which I'm happy to make the money. But Most of the time, possession and access, it's very well set out in a standard possession order. There are two types, the standard possession order, right, and the extended, where you do more of your pickup and return at school.
Yeah.
All right? Try to stay on that track. But even then, it's not quite 50-50, but it's pretty close. Both parents are going to be very active. It's like 40-something, it's very close to the 50. So don't get caught up in, 50-50. The courts used to hate that, where a child would be, 1 week with one parent and 1 week with the other. They're more likely to accept something like that now, depending on some circumstances. But just try to stay within. You can customize some, but try to stay with the normal, because we know what's been proven in court, what's not. And you start writing all these custom provisions, you get a lot of vagueness. Even with a good lawyer, it's going to try to write the right thing. So. But let's talk about, the question was about when does somebody get custody, but I wanted to address what custody really meant.
Okay.
But, the times you should be seeking custody, again, are as if your kids have been neglected, or if they've been abused, or it might be in a situation with you, or it could be drug use, that the person just has a terrible addiction, drugs or alcohol, and they're a danger to the child too. Those kind of situations would be good. If it's a matter of parenting style, or that you want to go to one church and they want to go to another, or be really mad at your ex, that's not the time to do that. And the courts don't like that. And you don't want to give the court the options to do what they want to do with your child. You want to have some control over that.
Yes.
So if you can avoid a situation, and again, if it's not abuse or neglect, then try to come to some kind of compromise. That's the way to do it. But if they were looking at that, let's assume that neither parent are drug users and they're both good people.
Okay.
Then the courts will probably look at who spends the most time with the kids, who takes the child to the doctor, who takes the child to school and picks up, who goes to the parent-teacher meetings, who's active in their extracurricular activities like soccer or band. So whoever's been that person, that primary caretaker, over a long period of time, not just where the person suddenly says, well, I should be the person to be. It's too late then. They're going to look back and see what you've been doing all that time. And if you've been the person who's never gone to a parent-teacher conference, you're probably going to be in a bad place. You
want to be the best parent you can be, regardless.
That's true.
That's the bottom line. But if the other parent is neglecting the child, then that's when you want to step up and be the better one.
Yeah, absolutely. And we could go into a lot more about it, but just realize it's a very costly situation, and you can go with beer budgets, which are still a lot of money, or champagne budgets, like a lot of rich people do. But it's not just about the money; it's about your time and your heartache and the worry that you have all during this time period. And again, if that's what you have to do, you have to do it. But there are a lot of other alternatives, I think, and creative things that you can do to get where you want to get to,
That's
and not hurt your child.
Yes, it's all in the best interest of the children at the end of the day.